Hope everyone's having a nice morning. I definitely have had my coffee and tea, so I'm ready to go for this webinar. It's going to be a great time. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon. I'm Allison Lester, the Associate Director of Visitor Member Engagement, and I'm coming to you live from the Heard Museum. I'd like to welcome you to today's virtual art talk and studio visit with noted jewelry artist Richard and Jared Chavez. Just a few housekeeping items. Today's event is a webinar, so you'll only see and hear from me and our panelists. The chat box is open. Just select everyone if you would like your comments to be seen by more than me and just the panelists. At the very end of the discussion, I'll come back to open the Q&A. So please, if you have questions at any time, submit them either through the comments or through the Q&A function, and that way we'll be ready to go once we get to that portion. So just feel free to put them there. And then if you have any technical difficulties, you can call the membership helpline. I'm going to drop that as the first comment in the chat. And you can also just send a message directly to me. Just when you're doing comments, just select me and I can see those and help you out as well. We'll also have a brief survey for you at the conclusion of the event. Those responses have been great for helping us continue to plan these virtual art talks, which we do have quite a few more coming up this summer. And the webinar is being recorded, so please check our YouTube channel in about a week. You can also see all the previous virtual art talks there as well. Today's discussion is moderated by our Chief Curator, Diana Pardue. So without further delay, I will turn this over to Diana, who will introduce the rest of the panelists, and I'll see everyone again for the Q&A.
Thank you, Allison. Oh, we're just so pleased to have Richard and Jared with us today. I'll give you just a little bit of background information, and I know that everyone's anxious to hear them talk. Richard began his career in architecture, and around 1975 or so, he started making jewelry. Within a few short years, he received a lot of recognition for his work. He continued to develop his unique style of jewelry, and the Heard was just so honored that he agreed to do an exhibit of his jewelry with us in 2017. There is a book, I'll just hold that up, that showcased that exhibit that's still available in the Heard Museum shop. Jared began making jewelry as a young boy. And then after high school, he attended Georgetown University. He was interested in digital art, but he also had an opportunity to study photography, web design, and printmaking. He graduated in 2005, and in 2007, he was one of 8 artists who were in an exhibit at the Heard of young jewelers. Welcome, Richard and Jared. They're muted.
Go ahead. Thank you very much, Diana. It's good to be online with you and everyone else that's going to be viewing the Zoom.
Yeah, we really miss talking to everybody in person, but this is really great to be able to get together like this. So, but yeah, I don't know if you want to do a little.
Well, I guess I'll start with how I got into the business of jewelry making. Back in before 1976, I was doing architectural work for a firm in Albuquerque, and I really enjoyed doing architecture because that's what I wanted to do back when I first started thinking about a career and what I wanted to do in life. But I wasn't sure if I could really get into it. I didn't want to do something that I wasn't going to be interested in. And as a way of testing it out, I went to a drafting school just so I could come in the back way and see how things were going to turn out. And after I finished my training, I came back to Albuquerque, and Sharon and I were married about a year by then. We moved back to Albuquerque, and I found a job in an architectural firm. And it was really interesting. And at that point, the 19 Pueblos of New Mexico was building, I guess you would call it a meeting center, like a museum for all the 19 Pueblos in New Mexico. And the 19 Pueblos that commissioned the firm of Hochauer wanted a native person to be involved in the design process. And I was picked to be that person to work with the architect. And so I did that for about 3 years, and I really enjoyed doing the architectural work, and I found my niche in that design world. Well, anyway, it was really interesting how I would work doing drawings. And today when I do jewelry designs, I still draw up most of the pieces that I want to create. But anyway, and the firm, the architectural firm did a lot of models, and I was the main one that was doing the models for the firm. And so I don't know how many models of the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center I did, but that was good training in visualizing, say, what size window to use, or the height of the building, the angle, all those things. And so I would make a model form and look at it. And when you see the actual scale model, then it shows you where you need to make changes as far as scale of the windows, the doors, how wide to make the openings and all that. So that was good training. And I did that for 3 years. And I think after working for the firm for about 1.5 years, I decided to go back to the University of New Mexico and work towards a degree in architecture. So that's what I did. So I was working part-time and going to school at the same time, working towards an architectural degree. But it was really difficult going because Sharon, my wife, was a stay-at-home mom. And I was getting paid $1.25 an hour, and that was really difficult. I mean, trying to raise a baby on that kind of money, buying formula milk and all that, it was tough. And so I had to think about what else can I do in order to supplement the income. And I thought about, oh, maybe I could make what you call he-she. Back in the 1970s, that was a popular form of an adornment for people that wanted to buy Native American jewelry. And the Pueblos are used to making what you call he-she, and they've been doing that forever. So just by watching my grandfather, I was able to pick up the whole process. So I started on my own. And but as far as marketing went, I had no idea where to market the items, because I did go to traders, but they weren't willing to pay what you wanted. And it wasn't worth working on the items and not getting any money for it. But anyway, so I went directly to the market of selling to Navajos and Zunis. So that really worked out. And then the Filipino manufactured items came into the United States, the Southwest area, because there was a lot of money made on that through the traders and people that were in that type of business. And so the whole market just dropped. You couldn't make any money on the he-she. And in desperation, I thought, well, I still like to do jewelry, but I don't know if I could do metal work. So I'm a technical person, and I like to read technical books. So I thought, well, maybe I can teach myself, because I couldn't afford to go to school, some jewelry making school. And so I bought a book on how to silversmith Navajo style. I think it was John Hunt or somebody that wrote the book. Anyway, I read through the whole book, and I said, okay, I'll start buying supplies when I could afford it. So that's how I got into the work of jewelry making in metal. And, but again, making jewelry, excuse me, I didn't know what kind I wanted to make. And I tried doing a simple sterling silver ring with turquoise, but I couldn't see myself in it because it was too traditional, and I was used to looking at contemporary items, whether it was jewelry, paintings, or sculpture. That's what really appealed to me. So I just kept trying and experimenting in different ways. So I thought, well, I know how to cut stones, and I like to use certain colors. And if I get the machinery, I can go to cutting my own stones. So that's how I got started. And after doing that for a year or two, then I said, well, I'll give myself 5 years. And if I can't get anywhere with that jewelry making in 5 years, then I'll just quit and go back to the university and finish my degree. But I kept building on it, and then people liked my work. Excuse me. I'm not used to talking much, so I get thirsty. Let me take a drink of water. Anyway, and after cutting stones, different colors, then I started finding what appealed to me. So I kept at it and bought more books on contemporary design. So that's where it started from, just keep designing and coming up with new ideas. And there were some jewelers that had been in the business for a while, so I used to go see their work and admire their work and say, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could sell my work through an organization and have a booth. And I just kept working at it. And first piece set I made, I entered in a show here in New Mexico and got grand prize for that, which was really surprising. I was really, I thought, well, I guess I'm doing something right. So I did my first Indian market in 1976 and took what I made. And at that time, that was when I met Martha Strieber, or her name was Martha Cusick at the time. And she had a gallery in Chicago called the Indian Tree. And she sought me out and found my booth and asked me if I wanted to do a show in Chicago. And everything that was happening was kind of fast paced and surprising me that I had no idea what a gallery show meant. Oh my, excuse me. Well, anyway, I agreed to doing the show for Marty. And could you take over before I got up?
Yeah. Sorry, he had his throat gets really dry. But yeah, after that show, it was really kind of when things took off for him. He really, got more into the jewelry fabrication process, started attending more shows, doing more markets, and really started developing his work from there. And so it really just kind of blossomed over time. And I don't know,
well, that year, I believe it was maybe 1977, I went out to Chicago. And that was really an awesome trip for me. And we did the show at the Indian Tree. And I believe it was Dextra. I did a show with the Potter. And what was really amazing for me was to see the actual buildings that I had read about in architecture. So I stayed in Chicago for a week or so and viewed some of the buildings, and to actually see the interiors and everything, like the Frank Lloyd Wright homes. So it was really a great honor to do that show with Marty and to do what I did. And I came back to New Mexico, and that was the start of, I guess, truly believing that I can make it in the jewelry world. If I kept up the development of new designs and everything. So that's what I try to do every time that I would make items, is think about how I should do the work or change designs. And I used to work mostly in silver at one point up until maybe early 80s. And I started getting into the gold jewelry. And gold itself works differently from silver.
Well, we can talk about that when we get into the slides. But I don't know if you'd like, I can do my part as well. Getting into the jewelry was something that I had never really expected for myself. It was just kind of, it kind of happened by happenstance. Just one of those summer times when you're a kid and have nothing better to do. And I always knew my dad made jewelry in the studio, but I guess I never actually really thought about what he did. And it really just kind of took being really bored one day and kind of wandering in and complaining about having nothing to do. And in this household, there really always was something to do. But in that summer, my dad said, well, okay, if you really want to do it, then I'll teach you how to make jewelry. But it's something that you really need to put all of your effort in and make sure that it's not something that's just kind of a come and go thing. You really have to put all of yourself into it, because of all that my dad put into his work over the years was important to him. And so what he was teaching me was a lifetime of learning. And so he really started me out with the basics of just really kind of showing me how to saw, how to file, solder. And, you know, for a 10-year-old boy, you know, it was a little daunting at first because, you know, I mean, I guess I wasn't even really thinking about it either. It's just, you know, you're given the tools and kind of shown how to do it, and just made to run with it. And so with that, I really didn't have a immediate direction as to what I was going to make or the style of design that I was going to have, because he didn't get into teaching me lapidary work right away. So there wasn't that direct transition of saying, okay, well, I'm going to do work that looks like yours, because I didn't have that knowledge yet. And so he started me out entirely with silversmithing, and gave me stamps, showed me how to use stamps, showed me how to form on anvils and forge. And so that's really kind of where things started. And I was really allowed to experiment with metal and really just kind of play around. And so my early designs, you see a lot of that. You see a lot of textured work, but then you also just have a lot of formed pieces, or you have constructed pieces. So it's a wide variety. And over time, stamping would take precedence, and I would utilize more stamp work in my designs, and that kind of became my signature style, I guess if you could say that. It wasn't until later, more recently, which my designs began to kind of go back to where I started, and kind of experimenting more with form, with, you know, without using so much texture, without using so much of a signature style, just because, you know, there's, you know, one thing my dad has always taught me is that you can't stay in one place for too long. If you stay in one place for too long, it doesn't help your work, it doesn't help the people who collect your work, and it doesn't help you. Because if you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, you stagnate, and it's not fun anymore. You really have to make sure that you have to be excited about what you're making. And I think that's one thing for us, which as we go on, we continue to have that excitement about what we do. And I'm just going to pull up, is that okay, Diana, if I pull up the slides? I'm going to go ahead and pull up a bit of a presentation we have here. So we'll start off with my dad, and what we have here are just kind of a few images of dad working in the studio. And this, I guess, Dad, you could say, is what you would find yourself doing every summer. Mostly this is where you would basically live, here in the studio, right?
Oh, yes. I would get up early in the morning and be in the studio by 8:30 or 9 and work until 5:30 when I was younger. And nowadays I quit maybe about 4:30 or so because my eyesight isn't as 100% there anymore. Well, anyway, I used to put in a lot of hours, and the machine that I'm working with there, I have two grinding machines there, and they all have diamond wheels on it. That's a 6-inch diameter model. And that works really well in getting to a stage where you have a nice polish on the stones. You go from one end that's about 120 grit up on to say 12,000 mash on one end. So that's really fine. And after that, you use polishing compounds to get the real highly polished surface on the stones.
And so this just shows one of the aspects of, with my dad's work, there are so many different levels of polishing, which he himself has come to develop over the years. And it's really been a lot about trial and error, right? Right.
And each stone, say coral, I can polish on that leather pad that you see on the wheel. And, but the harder stones, you have to go to a different process. So it took me years to discover all that just by trial and error.
And setting is one of those things that takes the most of your time, right? Especially if it's a lot of smaller pieces.
As far as getting a tight fit, you have to be really careful, especially with the softer stones, and you have to know when to get to a certain point and go to the next fine stage of polishing or sanding. Because if you overgrind, then you have to redo the whole stone again. That's time lost.
And this just kind of shows some of the smaller pieces. This was a collaborative piece that my dad worked on some years ago, a necklace piece. And these were, we'll talk about this later, but later on in my career, we began to collaborate on larger pieces, neck pieces, what have you. And so I would generally start with the metal work, and my dad would move into the lapidary work. And this is just another image of him setting. And for me, watching him do this, this was always the most stressful part because this would be the end of a piece. And, you know, he would have a certain amount of time, right, to set the pieces.
Oh, yes. And if you don't push the stone in enough and set the bezel, sometimes you have to destroy the stone in order to start over again. And that's kind of frustrating.
So it was very tense right before Indian market a lot of times, because there was always so, you know, you're on a deadline, and oftentimes you are working the night before Indian market. So a lot of these pieces tended to be, you know, a lot of energy went into them, well, to say the least. And this just kind of shows one of the more recent pieces he's done.
As I was telling Diana, that the turquoise is Morenci, and there was a client that had 6 slabs of that grade Morenci, and he asked me to make a bracelet with that. And that's what I did. And it came out really beautiful because all the stones are matched. And so the pyrite in it really added quite a bit to the way the bracelet looks. So I was happy with the design, and so was the client. And this one has red coral, almost say towards a pinkish color. And the ones that I've done lately don't have too many other colors in the stones except the main color, like this one has the salmon coral in it.
And what is it for you that really makes you want to, that you're with your color choices? Why is it that you limited your choice of color with the pieces that you do?
I think the main thing I think about, say I look at other jewelers' work, and sometimes, I mean, each one has their own way of doing, if they're do lapidary work, of deciding how many colors to add, but it can get too busy. And so I try to stay away from putting too many different colors in. If it's a coral bracelet, then the black works well with that, same with the turquoise and the gold bars. So that's what I try to do, is stay with simplicity in the stonework. And same with the framework of the metal too.
But that's where the Mies van der Rohe philosophy comes in, right?
Right, less is more. I mean, the architect that I worked for, I guess he taught me a lot about designs. Like the buildings we did were really elegant and simple. The furniture that went into the buildings and all those things, and artwork that he had. So that all influenced me in how I wanted, or what I liked in my design work. Here you see a black jade bracelet with turquoise, coral, and I think maybe a gold bar in there somewhere. But again, it's mostly the black jade that's in the bracelet.
And for me, it's always been about the structural quality of his work in terms of how his pieces are put together, because there is definitely that architectural look to all these pieces. And so when I photograph anything that he does, I try to photograph it in that manner, so it reflects that as well. And you know, one of the things that makes it harder as a photographer in photographing his work is that the level of polish he's able to attain in a lot of his materials, especially with the blacks, becomes so reflective that they'll reflect like background so easily. So you just have to find the right angles to make sure that you capture the piece in itself, but you're not capturing what's around it. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but yeah.
And that's another thing that I have an issue with as far as polished stones. And I don't know, when I started taking my materials out to the sunlight just to see if I got the whole surface polished or not, because natural light really shows up where you need to polish more to get that sheen on the whole surface. So it's a time-consuming process, but I'd rather work that way. So I try not to set stones at night, because I haven't checked to see if the whole surface is polished.
And coming up as I was learning how to polish my own stones, cut my own stones, because I started out just buying cabs, that sort. And when I was working with the stones that I like to use, which are agates, Montana agates, Brazilian agates, they're very hard stone. And in learning how to polish those, I had to learn to polish the Richard Chavez way, which took quite some time, just because like he said, you take them out in the sunlight, and what may look fine on the inside and looks perfectly, highly reflectively polished, you take it outside, you're going to see a whole sheen of scratches on it. And so I knew I didn't want to show it to my dad until they were at least at a point where, okay, maybe there's 1 or 2 scratches, or but you know, it's not something that he would say, okay, go back and try it again.
Here you have black jade with coral and turquoise in earrings. And I play around with the shapes that like I have different templates, circles, triangular, and curves and all that. And I utilize those to when I'm working on designs.
This is one of your more recent rings, right?
Yes, and this is more of an architectural kind of ring, where you have that half round circle that's set on top of the ring shank. And I think about how I can solder the item and make room to set the stonework in. And my rings, mostly all of them I make square, which is my favorite shape. And I had to make my own ring mandrels in the square shape, because most of what you find on the market are either oval or round.
And one thing you've done over the years is you've really tried to find new materials to work with. And this was one of those which you had to integrate a new material, right? Because
oh, yes. And I've always enjoyed using black material, and there were things that I tried, like say jet, which comes from the Southwest, but it's like material that's coal, I believe. And when you grind the material, it smells like burning coal. I didn't like that. It was too soft. And so I did some research online years ago. And I found black material from Russia and black jade from California and Australia, but they're not as high grade as what I can get from Wyoming. And the Wyoming black jade is called Edwards black jade. But that type of black jade isn't as plentiful as it was at one point, because a lot of collectors get them in a rough form and purchase them when they're available, and there's not much of that. And so when I get a chance, I buy the black jade, and I've been collecting for years. And here's a surface that it's a small piece of black jade, and you can see the reflective surface on it that's got a high polish. And they come in different sizes. And here's another one. I believe this is about maybe 4 pounds, and it's about 2 inches thick. And I've got others that are still thicker than this one, but you know, I use them sparingly, you know, only when I want to make something in black jade.
Share the screen again. And lapis has always kind of been one of my favorite stones that he uses, because of just his integration of the use of pyrite in the piece. Really just kind of creates that, it just almost enhances the rich color of the design. And you know, buckles are one thing that he's really been playing around with as far as designs go, right? You've been straying away from the rectangular shapes.
Talk about that.
And his earrings more recently have been harder to find. Well, I guess just in general, most of his work has been harder to find. Even at this past herd show, he didn't send me with anything. But you know, when you can find them, they're pretty rare. And these sugilite earrings, you know, are just beautiful. I'm not sure what he's looking for right now, but he's looking for something. And as I was saying before, one of his the things that he enjoys doing is finding new materials, and in finding those materials, oftentimes he'll play around with integrating them into new designs. And a collector in New York who represents my dad wasn't able to include coral in a lot of the pieces that she sold, so he had to find a red alternative from coral.
And that is Mexican fire opal, and it worked really well with the black jade and also the turquoise. So I like the combination, how it came out on that one. Can you go back to the buckle? I want to talk about that. And the buckle that you saw before, I remodified the design, because the sharp point on your left-hand side, I wasn't too happy when you put it on the belt itself. Then there was something that was lacking on there. So I redesigned the whole thing. And as you can see here, right here on the end, I made an angle instead of it coming to a sharp point. So I'll remake that again. But, you know, little things like that, when you see it in a drawing and then the actual piece, makes a difference in how you want it to look next time.
And I think for us, having a design on paper is extremely important. It's been the easiest way of being able to conceptualize something and bring it from two-dimensional to three-dimensional shapes. And I've over the years, I've amassed quite a collection of books, which are just filled with starting from the basic sketch, the basic idea, all the way to finished scale drawings, which you really kind of bring, give you an idea of like, especially when you're designing a piece for say a reseller, so that like they want it in a certain material, then you need to be able to get exact quotes for, especially if it's gold, to be able to kind of have that exact dimension that you need.
You can go back to the other ones. And that is green jade, Siberian green jade. And again, it's an architectural looking ring. And you see the half circle on top. And it's not always half circles I could use oval shape on top, or maybe a square, just about any shape, depending on how it looks once it goes on the shank. And Siberian green jade is one of my favorite jades also. And they come in rough form too. And I try to find the green jade that I like to use. And here's one that's polished on one side. And it's about 2.5 inches thick. There's not much of this high grade that you can find in the US. So when I do find it, I try to purchase those items. I've got maybe a 17-pound piece, which I haven't used, but I may never use them, but Jared may someday. But because of the color, they come in different shades, some lighter green than this one here, and some darker. So you can combine those and use them different ways with colors that can go with the green.
And that's definitely another one which just really takes quite a bit of time to be able to get that exact polish on there, because a lot of times if you use traditional methods, you're going to end up with more of a matte finish. And so that's definitely something I've been working on over the years, and getting that that standard of quality, which is taking some time, but it's definitely worth worth the time once you put it in. No, well, I guess now coming to my method of work. Yeah, like I said, I really didn't have a whole set direction as far as the style of work that I was going to make, and it's really changed a lot over the years. And one of the styles that I've developed over time, which has kind of led to a lot of the pieces that we've been able to collaborate on, I call linear inlay. And basically it started out as just happenstance. I was making a frame for a bezel for a stone, and I had some extra strips of silver that I just had kind of scattered in the middle of that, just for no reason. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, what would happen if you soldered those pieces in? And so I experimented and I tried it, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I can take my exact drawing style, my line work style as I draw designs like I would do if I stamped them, and apply it to more of a three-dimensional shape. And I showed it to my dad, and he really liked it. And my initial pieces were pretty rough, and he helped me develop a way which I was able to basically smooth off the surface, which would create a whole one uniform shape. So it looked like you almost basically pierce the entire piece, but to pierce the entire piece for the amount of line work that I do would take quite some time, and you wouldn't have the type of result. But even this method really does take some time. This image shows you just starting to solder these pieces. And with this style of fabrication, it's actually something that it's a lot easier with gold. It's a lot more intense, just because there's a lot more expense on the line. But with these pieces, you're applying a lot of heat a lot of times, and with silver, you're heating up the entire piece to one consistent melting point. And so you really have to worry about some pieces coming apart, some pieces soldering together, and it's nerve-wracking. So you really just have to be careful. But with gold, at least you can kind of isolate certain areas and just kind of make sure that you're not having to worry about the rest of the pieces you're soldering it. But like my dad, I start out with hand-drawn hand-drawn designs. And this is me working on a collaborative piece that we did some years ago. And what actually happens with some of these necklaces is if my dad gets a commission for one of these and he wants it to be a collaborative piece, he'll go through my sketchbooks. And is it earrings that you said that you were looking at, that where you found the designs for the links?
Oh, yes. He has a lot of drawings, and I just imagine them in different forms of jewelry, whether it's necklaces or earrings or, part of a ring, and that usually works out.
So, that's one of the ways in which we're in the studio. It's been nice being side by side. I have my workspace, he has his workspace, but we're able to come together for these projects and or bounce ideas off of each other. So it's been a really great partnership over the years. And this just shows you farther into the process of fabricating these linear inlay links. And you see the drawn links down here, and basically I have all these laid out, and what those do is they give me an idea of where I need to cut the metal and how I need to bend the metal, and I tape them all in place until I'm ready to solder them all in. And so you can see the actual gold link itself. Each of those pieces has not been soldered in yet, but they're held in place by that tape backing, and it gets a little mind-boggling after a while, because you have to keep track of all these pieces, and as you're putting them in place, and you don't want to lose them or put them out of place, because then after a while you're wondering why you have a gap when it was all nicely fit in the first place. And a lot of our work just takes a lot of brute strength. And this was another collaborative piece early on. These were links for the only belt that we've ever done together. It was a commission for Marty Striever, and it was a black jade silver concho belt, 10 links. And that took a lot of planning. That took us some time to figure out and how we were going to do it, and it was probably one of our most time-intensive pieces, wasn't it?
Oh yes, it took quite a bit of time and work, especially with the design, because when it was commissioned, I had no idea what shape we would come up with that we would use. So I sat down and looked through some of Jared's drawings and decided on a shape. So I thought, okay, I don't want the links too large or too small. So I drew them up at different scales until one that was, I drew that felt like it was compatible as a belt design. So we went with that. But as far as the in-between designs with the line work and then where the stonework goes, I didn't know how it was going to flow. So that was another design process. And so I don't know how many times I went through the whole drawing of the 10 buckles to see how the design with the line work and the stonework would flow, until finally I came up with one and we both looked at it and we went with that. And it really worked well.
We have an image of that coming up as well. And then just another one of the every aspect of every piece is really thought of, and this is just one of those aspects. So this is the backing of a necklace, because it's nice to have a really highly polished piece, but at the same time, you have to think about if you set it down on a surface and you have to worry about scratching. And so that's one of the things we try to work out with a lot of our neck pieces, or even bracelets and rings, is that having a lightly textured surface alleviates that. So this just kind of shows one of those texturing processes of the back of a necklace in order to just achieve a nice satiny finish, so that you don't have to worry about a piece getting dinged up or scratched as over the years. And this just shows you kind of the original style of work that I started out on, and this is my stamp work. And it was my dad who suggested the method of getting the actual lines of my drawings into the metal itself. He gave me steel music wire and told me how to bend it into shape and tape it onto the design and then hammer it in, so it acted as its own stamp. And so by doing that, I was able to create, again, another method of recreating the way in which I was drawing. Over the years, the pieces of wire have gotten smaller and smaller, which have allowed me to create more intricate designs in the surface of silver. And also my collection of stamps has definitely grown. It's very varied at this point. So I enjoyed collecting stamps and finding new textures and seeing how they work with the silver. Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. And my usage of stones is very wide and varied as well. I initially started out using a lot of agates, but I did go through a big phase of labradorite, and I just love the reflective qualities. The only thing is it's a super fragile stone, and so if you have a great piece of labradorite and you're polishing it, you're grinding it, and you can maybe get to the last points of getting a polish on it, and then you don't realize, because there are fractures running out throughout the stone, that entire piece could just split in half. And so it's it's beautiful, but at times it can be heartbreaking as well. And this style of ring I call my structure series ring, and I really made it to show off translucent stones, because this actually raises the stone above the ring shank, so that for some rings you can create a little window behind the stone itself, allowing light to shine through. And for my work, light is essential to, because you don't want to over texture, and I don't like a lot of darkness within pieces, and so that light itself can allow the stone to glow. So it's just another one of those things you kind of play around and integrate into the work as you go on. And this just shows another line work piece integrating a stone set within the design, and that's an aspect of fabrication which took some time to figure out, especially when soldering silver onto gold for something of this scale, just because of the different melting temperatures, and just the silver pieces are so heavy that they do take quite some heat, so you have to be real careful with how you're soldering. And this is a more recent style of work that I've started playing around with, and I call this my third dimension series. And this is really where I was saying that more recently a lot of my designs have come up as a result of just playing with metal again. I've really just kind of started seeing what I could do in building with structure, just building with simple round wire. And so I started creating these frames with silver and just seeing how I could build those out. So instead of having a two-dimensional shape, this really kind of brought it out into the open, and integrating different materials like the pearls you see here. So it just creates this really cool geometric juxtaposition against each other. And so this has been a lot of fun and playing around with, and I'm hoping that this style of design is something that my dad and I will be able to integrate, to collaborate with together. And I try to make both the stone selection and the design itself as harmonious as possible. This piece is using Botswana Agate, and it's actually reversible. So the Botswana Agate floats above a line work surface, and the line work reflects the style of the stone as well. And again, labradorite, I'm a big sucker for it. If I find a beautiful deep blue, I have to have it and integrate it in this way. And this one had a bit of a rose cut on it, which was really nice for this setting. Earrings are one of my favorite things to do, and unfortunately, a lot of my earring photos were vertical, so I wasn't able to put them into the slideshow like I wanted to. But this just kind of shows you some of the detail of another style of earring I do. I call these my mace style dangle earrings. And they're actually quite dainty, but this macro shot really blew them up. And this just shows another line work piece, three-dimensional shape, double-sided pendant. And with this one, the slice of the stone was so thin that it created this beautiful window effect, so that when you held it up against the light, the colors of the stone just radiated through the other side of the line work, which really just created a wonderful effect. So there's always you really just kind of have to look at both your stone selection and the type of design that you're making, because both can play hand in hand in just elevating a piece. And you know, once everything comes together, you know, you would hope everything comes together in the end, but it's you know, just great when all of these elements come together in harmony.
And one thing I want to say is that if you see the curves on top of the pendant, and that's the way of connecting the chain to those curves. And that's what we try to do. Instead of just putting a hook on the end and you put your ring through that hook, we try to make it part of the designs, and the curve that you see on top, that really works well. It adds to the whole how the design works together with the connection to the chain.
And these were just another really simple earring that I did. I wanted to create a seamless hoop earring because a lot of times with hoop earrings, they end up getting caught on different things. And so for this one, I wanted to create a seamless loop. And so it took a lot of little playing around with, and the design that I came up with basically closed the loop on the hoop by creating a tempered 14 karat ear wire, and that was strong enough that it held the earring in place, or earring, and closed the loop on the earring so that if it brushed up against something, it wouldn't catch. So it was you know, really just really nice design in the end. And this was one of the more recent bolo ties that I did. This was actually one that came out of 2020. This was part of a design series, which I created to really reflect my feelings at the time and just kind of hope for that change that we were all really hoping for. This one was kind of to reflect the dawn of a new day, really. The polished silver bar in the middle reflected the sunrise. The bottom reflected the New Mexico landscapes, and the Montana agate itself on the top reflected the early morning sky. And so it was really just kind of looking forward to that time when we could all look past 2020 and just really move forward. And you know, it was just really important for me to create the series of pieces that I did to reflect that moment in time, because it was really hard in itself during that year just to be able to create, to really get the motivation to come into the studio, to decide to work, to, you know, not say why am I doing this, you know, just because there aren't shows to go to. There's not a whole, you know, we're not doing anything. We're basically locked down. And so for Indian Market last year, I created a series of 8 pieces to kind of go along with those feelings. And it was really cathartic. It helped a lot to be able to do that and create and make those designs, which you know, just kind of allowed me to kind of breathe and say, okay, well, you know, let's move on. And that just kind of brings us to our collaborations. You know, the collaborations have been a really big part of our career over the past few years. And you know, my designs got to a point where my dad felt that our work really was reflective of each other. And so he felt comfortable enough. And then this is the one of the necklace that you'll see in the front of Symmetry in stone.
Oh, yes. And as Jared was saying, we both have our separate work areas. And I've watched his progress throughout the years. And about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, you know, his work was really coming along. And with him doing the line work, I started thinking, well, we could both contribute to those ideas that he has. I could do my lapidary work, and we could design earrings, rings, or necklaces, whatever. And I do the stonework, and he does the line work. So that was a big possibility at the time. And so we started with silver items. Like first item we ever worked on was a silver brace necklace, I believe. And that worked really well. And from then on, we went to gold items. And this partial photo that you see of the necklace, that was one of the major pieces that we ever worked on. Took quite a bit of time just to come up with the final piece.
And this was the necklace that you saw I was laying out in one of the earlier photos on paper. And butterflies have been a recurring theme in the works, haven't they, that you've been making?
Oh yes, I don't know. When I first made the butterfly, mostly as pins, I started out with not in large scale form, but what you see on this necklace, the wings themselves at the top, I would say that's about 2.5 inches across, and going down from top to bottom, that would be about 2 3/4, something like that. But it really worked well. And it's used as a pin also. So you have the pin back in the back. You see the attachment where the hooks are, and you can take that off and wear it as a pin.
And that's something we try to do a lot with these larger pieces and make them as versatile as possible. So you can see here in this silver collaboration, the pendant also can be removed and be worn as a necklace, or the chain itself can be worn as a necklace on its own. So, you know, for the larger pieces, we try to make sure that you're able to wear them in many different ways, just so that you don't just have the one big necklace all the time. And this is the belt that we were referring to earlier. And as you can see, the amount of work and the amount of time is definitely apparent in all of the soldering, the grinding, the polishing, and especially with it being black jade. This piece was truly a labor of love. And, you know, it was, we were very fortunate to be able to work on it together. And it was so nice to see it again in the show at the Herd.
And one thing with the belt, I think that's one of the only belts that I've ever made. And the reason for that is it takes a lot of time, and you have to make it interesting instead of all being the same design. Like I don't like to do that. I would prefer that each one has a different design. So this one was really quite an accomplishment for us. And everything that goes into the belt, it's custom made. Like the leather belt that you see on there, we ordered that, so that's custom made, fine leather, instead of just taking a piece of belt from J.C. Penney's or somewhere and you stick that on there. That's not our way. We'd rather have it designed and for the belt itself. So this is really a beautiful belt. I don't know where it is and who has it at this point.
And this was one of the, I think this was one of the last collaborations we did, right? Then the necklaces?
Yes, about 2 years ago. And it's in 18 karat gold, mostly coral with turquoise, black jade and white jade. And it's more of a choker type. It's not very long.
But this was one of the pieces which I thought was really neat, because it integrated the line work in between the two areas of lapidary work on the pendant itself, and which that separation was just really neat. And you know, having it a symmetrical design really just kind of I think added to the design. I was a big fan of this necklace.
And one thing with the necklaces or any major piece that we work on, I try to come up with a drawing and go with that. We might make a few changes along the way as we make the actual metal work, but usually I would say 95% of the time it follows the sketch.
And not all of our collaborations have been large. These were some of the smaller pieces that we did, but again, still integrating lapidary work and line work, and you know, just the designs just really work well together. And you know, but like I said, there's some other ideas on the horizon as far as how we can integrate our work. And so we're excited for that and how we'll bring that all together.
And the stones that you see in the necklace, that's high grade chrysoprase.
In the earrings.
Oh, the earrings.
And, you know, you can definitely see a lot more of our work on the website. We have an archive of most of our most recent works. And you can access that by going to the website, and there is an option for saying view the archive, and there is a password required for that. It's Santa Fe 1979. But definitely for the most in-depth history on Dad, and also his and my collaborative relationship in the studio. The book itself is just amazing that Diana did a wonderful job with that, and it's really exciting, and it was just so amazing to see all of Dad's work in the museum displayed as it was. It was just there were no words really walking into it and seeing that history there. But I think having that history, but also seeing that that consistency of his eye in having the and just having that ability to go forward and create. And it's something that I know is not easy, but over the years, he has managed to maintain his ability to continually evolve his work. And, it's just been a real pleasure to be able to, and again, there are no words to be able to say, how proud I am of my dad and what he does.
And back a few years ago when the show was proposed for my work, I was honored to have that asked on me. And I thought, okay, can we get enough items to fill the show? So I started looking up names, and people move, or maybe they passed on or whatever. But anyway, we got more than enough cooperation on the loaning of the items, so that really worked out well. I was happy with that.
And I see that there are a few questions on there. Do you collect stones as you find them and later work them into your designs?
Well, that's one thing that we really enjoy is going to gem and mineral shows. And I don't know how many years ago I started doing that, because I cut my own stones. And locally in Albuquerque or Santa Fe, there's not much in the way of a variety of stones that you can look at. So first show I ever went to was Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, which is one of the world's biggest shows in the US. And the amount of material that you see, it's amazing. I mean, you don't know where to look. I give myself 3 or 4 days just to look, and you kind of go in a hotel room or one of those conference places, so many items available. So you just kind of walk through it quickly and you see the finished item. So I said, oh, I could use that. So I have a few examples of rough material. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a dinosaur bone from Utah.
Hold it up a little bit.
And it's got a little bit of red with specks of off color, a black or grayish color. So that's the kind of materials that I buy. And better to buy one that has a surfaced area on the stone, because you can buy a rough material and there's no indication of how it's going to look. Like you see the stone here, I can't remember what kind of stone it is.
It's an agate.
It's an agate, but it has a red mark on it. And when you go to a trade show, red means it's high quality. But so far, we haven't cut into it. And once we do, then we'll know if we can use it or not. But sometimes it's a loss as far as materials go when it's kind of form.
And yeah, sometimes the roughest exteriors really just have the most interesting patterns in them. It's just really neat to see what you find as you slice, but and so that's half the fun of it. It's just it's nice to buy slabs, and it's nice to buy finished stones and everything, but when you can find something that is really just kind of like winning the lottery in a piece, that's pretty great. But we do have quite a bit of stock that, you know, yeah, we as collectors, that's kind of like our I guess our candy store in a way. It's just you really get excited about the stones. Oh, I can use this, I can use that. But
yeah, some have been sitting there for years, and someday maybe Jared will cut into them. I don't know. But I have, I don't know, stones here and there that I've been collecting for years. And here's sudolite, which is a purplish color, high grade. And I was able to buy a 7.5 pound slab about 10 years ago. And you can't find this material, this high grade anymore, because the mining company can't get any more of that. So I'm kind of stingy with this material. I don't have much of it left. So I use it only for special orders.
There are definitely some times when you buy things and you're more than likely never going to use them. You know, this is just a gigantic Brazilian agate, which just has, if you look in there, you can just see a whole lot of detail that, you know, I mean, it's exactly what I would want to use, but the idea of cutting it up is really difficult. You know, I mean, sometimes you just can't bring yourself to do it. But you know, maybe you save it all for a rainy day. We really don't have to go to any more gem shows, but it's fun.
Yeah, well, we really do enjoy going to gem shows, and we take my wife Sharon along because she's retired, and I'll ask her, you want to go with us today? Oh, no, I have no interest in looking at junk.
And then I see someone has asked if we've ever considered creating jewelry for like nose piercings, other piercings. I have been asked, you know, here and there, but usually it depends, you know, I mean, like, you know, I'm guessing I'm just not too familiar with certain aspects of if you need to use certain types of materials, especially if it's going in like the like a nose area like that, or like how, you know, like just the findings you would use for that. So I guess I've never really considered it, but you know, you never say never, and you know, it's always something to think about. And someone asked about why do you prefer square shaped rings?
It's not only, well, yeah, I should say, you know, I would say maybe about 90% of my rings are square because they fit more comfortably. And also because of the size of the setting on top itself. If it was round, sometimes if the setting on top is a little too large or weighty, then they tend to rotate more, whereas a square shape stays in place. You know, the setting on top stays on top. So that's why I prefer the square shapes.
And then someone asked if we're able to see this program online again. I don't know if they mean this talk or the, okay, yeah, the talk. I believe so, right?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's being recorded and it'll be up on our YouTube channel. So all you have to do is go to YouTube and search Herd Museum, and then it'll either be the last video posted or there's a playlist called Virtual Art Talks.
Okay.
All right.
And
a lot of nice comments here. No, I was just gonna say there's wonderful, wonderful comments about your presentation and your work.
Thank you everybody for these comments. And yeah, we just kind of wanted to finish up by showing everybody around the studio. If I can get this, let's see here. Okay. So you want to come over here, Dad, and show you?
Oh, you're going to, yeah, going to go on that?
Yeah. So this is our main workroom. This is where I work. It's a traditional French jeweler's bench. We work at everything at height level. Of course, I have my chair there and everything. My work area is generally very much messier than Dad's. And then over here you have his lapidary area.
Yeah, so this is where I do my grinding. And here I have the fields. On one end, you have about 120 grit all the way to 14,000 And then on the end, you have attachments for the finer finishes. And these are some of the different mashes that I use as far as getting a polish on the stones. It goes all the way up to this one, I believe, is 50,000, and you have to be careful how much heat you apply to that, because it has a plastic backing and it can melt and ripple the whole surface, and it's a ruining thing. And there are other machinery that we have that, or I have, that I don't keep out because we have limited space. When I was working by myself, that was enough room, more than enough room for me to work. But with Jared, when we started making jewelry, we had to put some machinery away and make room for both of us. But it works.
And over here I have, this is my stamping area, my stamping block. Dad and I went out one summer and found 2 perfect stamping blocks. These are what, cottonwood?
Oh yes, no, pine.
Pine stamping blocks, and we stained them ourselves. And yeah, it's just at a great height. And then over here you can see just collection of my stamps. I try to buy any interesting ones that I find. You see here, just it's a little hard to see, but all different types of textures. So I'm constantly building this collection. And then back here,
is where I do my work, and I don't use traditional jeweler's bench. It's something I started with. So as far as my working style, it's more my style than jeweler's style. So I have a regular flat surface, my metal, got metal connector, and all my pliers, my mandrels, my hammers down here. And it works really good for me as far as my space goes.
oops. Okay, all right, you can go back here. So that's our studio, and that's you know, if anybody has any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Oh.
Yeah, I don't really see any more questions, just more wonderful comments, and everybody just saying that they really enjoyed seeing your work when it was here a few years ago for the retrospective. I know I really enjoyed that exhibition as well. Everything was just displayed so beautifully, and then of course you can see the earrings on display in Small Wonders right now. So if you do come, your work is on view to see. So I think that's it in terms of the conversation today. It's been such a wonderful time talking to both of you. And, you know, with all these, I think we could just always sit here and listen for hours, and your studio is just fascinating. And I wouldn't know what to do in there with all the different materials you have to work with. And I always love every time you were here, Richard, a couple of years ago for the opening, and you had shown some of the stones you work with too. So it's always great to kind of see those raw materials. So thank you.
Right.
Oh yeah, I do see one last thing. Someone was asking if we wear our own jewelry. I only wear one thing. I have a bracelet that I've had for years. That's really the only thing that I wear. And you wear a buckle.
Buckle that I made for myself years ago. That's the only thing. But jewelry wise, no, I don't wear jewelry. You know, bracelets, bolos, and all that.
And our family doesn't have much either. So.
But I'm trying to rectify that. Made my wife a pendant for her birthday, so that worked out.
But yeah, thank you, everybody.
Oh, this was wonderful.
This has been enjoyable. Sorry for my coughing, all that, but it just dries up my throat.
Understandable. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, check this out on YouTube. It'll be up probably within the week, so no later than next week. So again, thank you. Appreciated you taking the time, and hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
I'll watch it and it's how awful.
Truthfully, I don't go back and rewatch myself. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Afternoon.
All right, bye, everybody.